All right, folks, get ready for a deep dive today. We're jumping headfirst into the world of fitness supplements and tackling a question that I'm sure many of you have pondered. Can a supplement really help sculpt that dream physique without resorting to, well, questionable methods?
Let's be real, the pressure to look a certain way is huge, and it can push people towards some risky choices, including substances they shouldn't even go near.
Exactly, and that's what makes today's deep dive so interesting. We're looking at Anvarol, marketed as a safe and legal alternative to those iffy substances. But here's the twist. Our source is a user review, not from some hardcore bodybuilding forum, but from the Sustainable Food Trade Association's website.
Talk about an unexpected place to find a bodybuilding supplement review, right?
Right. Okay, so let's break it down. Our reviewer's story is a pretty familiar one.
Definitely relatable. He's in his early 30s, loves hitting the gym, but was feeling stuck, like he wasn't seeing the definition he was working towards.
And it starts to mess with your head.
Oh, absolutely.
The review mentions he was comparing himself to his friends, feeling discouraged, even withdrawing socially a bit.
That's so common, though. We see all these ideal physiques everywhere we look, and it's easy to get sucked into comparing ourselves, even when those expectations are unrealistic. It can leave you feeling inadequate for no good reason.
It's true, and for our reviewer, that feeling of I need to do something led him to Anvarol after some serious internet deep dives.
And that's an important point to highlight. Desperation for those kinds of results can lead people down a dangerous path. Thankfully, he found Anvarol, which is marketed as a safe alternative. But you can see how easily someone in that headspace could make riskier choices.
Absolutely. So Anvarol, what is it? According to the review, it's this legal and safe alternative, specifically to Anavar, which is an anabolic steroid. And the big sell, it supposedly helps you achieve that ripped look during a cutting cycle.
And just to clarify, for anyone who's new to the bodybuilding world, a cutting cycle is like the sculpting phase. You're shedding body fat while trying to hold on to as much muscle mass as possible. Imagine chiseling away at a statue to reveal the definition underneath.
Okay, so like fine-tuning, getting that sharp look. The review really emphasizes how Anvarol can supposedly boost your strength, energy, burn fat, and of course help you keep those hard-earned muscles during a cut. And they claim it all comes down to increasing something called phosphocreatine production.
Now, phosphocreatine might sound like something out of a science fiction movie, but it's actually a natural compound found in your muscle cells. Think of it like your muscle's quick energy reserve. It's crucial for those short bursts of intense activity, like when you're pushing out those last few reps on a heavy set.
Right, like finding that last bit of strength to finish strong.
Exactly.
So more phosphocreatine equals more energy to power through tough workouts, leading to better results. At least that's the theory.
That's the idea. But, and this is crucial, just because Anvarol uses some natural ingredients and is marketed as safe, it doesn't mean it's completely risk-free. Supplements aren't regulated with the same scrutiny as medications. What works for one person might not work for another, and there's always the potential for side effects, which we'll get into later.
Good point. Always do your research and talk to your doctor before adding anything new to your routine, especially when it comes to your health. Speaking of research, this review actually goes into detail about Anvarol's ingredient list. And there are some interesting items on there.
Oh, there definitely are. Some familiar ones and some you definitely wouldn't expect to see in a muscle-building supplement.
For sure. We've got the usual suspects like whey protein concentrate and soy protein isolate, both at 450 milligrams per serving. They're like the dynamic duo of the protein world.
Absolutely. They're both complete proteins, meaning they provide all the essential amino acids your body needs to repair and build muscle tissue, which is essential, especially when you're pushing your muscles hard.
Okay, so good building blocks. Then there's 225 milligrams of BCAAs, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard of.
Right, branched-chain amino acids.
But a little refresher never hurts.
Branched-chain amino acids, or BCAAs, are the VIPs of muscle building. We're talking leucine, isoleucine, and valine. They play a key role in muscle protein synthesis, which is basically your body using those amino acids from protein to build and repair muscle tissue.
So it's like giving those construction crews the right materials to build those muscle gains, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the protein powerhouses, but then things get interesting with wild yam root. We're talking 150 milligrams of this. Not your typical ingredient in a protein shake, is it?
Not your average gym bro ingredient, that's for sure. But it's fascinating. Wild yam root has a history of being used for hormonal balance, especially for women. It's got this compound called diosgenin that can be converted into different hormones in the body, including DHEA and testosterone.
And those are definitely relevant when it comes to building muscle and strength. So maybe the makers of Anvarol are onto something here, targeting multiple pathways that could influence muscle growth.
It's a multi-pronged approach, and as we'll see, that's a bit of a theme with Anvarol.
Interesting. All right, and last but definitely not least, we have the ingredient with the most intimidating name, adenosine 5-foot triphosphate disodium. Try saying that 3 times fast.
I'll take your word for it. But behind that tongue twister is a molecule that's absolutely essential for your body's energy production. You see, adenosine 5-foot triphosphate, or ATP for short. Or ATP is often called the energy currency of your cells. It's like the gas that powers your car. You need it to go anywhere.
And just like your car needs a constant supply of fuel, our cells need a steady supply of ATP to keep everything running, especially during a workout, right?
Exactly.
So by adding this adenosine 5-foot triphosphate disodium to Anvarol, are they basically trying to give your cells a bigger gas tank for those intense gym sessions?
You got it. The idea is that supplementing with ATP could provide an extra energy boost, helping you push harder, train longer, and potentially see those results faster.
Okay, that makes sense. But is there any actual science to back up this whole bigger gas tank idea?
There have been some promising studies on ATP supplementation, especially when it comes to athletes. Some research suggests it might enhance muscle strength and power output, but, and this is important, we need more studies to really confirm these benefits and figure out the optimal dosages.
So the jury's still out on whether this ATP ingredient is a game changer or just hype. But let's not forget, this whole deep dive started with that user review, and our guy seemed pretty happy with his Anvarol experience.
He did. According to the review, he started feeling more energized within a couple of weeks of taking Anvarol. Remember how we talked about that initial hurdle of feeling stuck? Well, he felt like he'd finally broken through that plateau.
Which could be that extra ATP kicking in, giving him the energy to really push himself.
Could be. It's tough to say for sure without a controlled study. But what's really interesting is that this increased energy actually led to some real results for him. He mentioned being able to lift heavier and challenge himself with progressive overload.
Progressive overload, isn't that just a fancy way of saying level up your workout?
Exactly. It's basically the golden rule of muscle growth. Consistently pushing your muscles by increasing weight, reps, or intensity. And it sounds like Anvarol may have given him that extra push to make those gains happen.
Okay, so we've got the energy and strength boost, but what about the main event? We're talking about the cutting cycle here. Did Anvarol actually deliver on that front, losing fat while keeping those muscles?
This is where it gets interesting. The reviewer claims he did lose weight while maintaining his muscle mass. He credits a combination of Anvarol, a strict diet, and his workout routine.
So no magically waking up with six-pack abs just from taking a pill.
Definitely not, and that's a really important takeaway here. Supplements, even if they do have benefits, are not magic bullets. They should always be part of a holistic approach to health and fitness, which includes a balanced diet and regular exercise.
Right. We hear that from fitness experts all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's about the whole package, not just relying on one quick fix.
Absolutely. But even with this combined approach, diet, exercise, and Anvarol, there's another factor that could be at play here, the placebo effect.
Ah, the power of the mind. Tell us more.
The mind is incredibly powerful, especially when it comes to fitness. Think about it if you believe something is going to work. Whether it's a workout routine, a new diet, or even a supplement, you're more likely to stick with it, stay motivated, and potentially see better results.
So, is it possible that our reviewer's positive experience was partly due to his own belief in Anvarol's effectiveness? Like he went in expecting results, and that itself might have influenced his experience.
Exactly. It's not to say that the ingredients in Anvarol didn't have any effect, but it could be a kind of synergy, a combination of the ingredients, his hard work, and that extra boost from the placebo effect.
It's like the mind-body connection at work in the gym. Now, before we jump to any conclusions about Anvarol being a miracle supplement or just some clever marketing, let's break down its claims one by one and see what the science really has to say. Ready to do some detective work?
Let's do it.
First up, Anvarol's muscle-building claims. We talked about those protein powerhouses, the whey, soy, and BCAAs, but what about the wild yam root and the ATP?
Well, the research on wild yam root and muscle growth specifically is still pretty limited. Remember how we discussed its potential impact on testosterone and DHEA? While those hormones definitely play a role in muscle growth, we need more studies, especially in humans, to say for sure what wild yam root's direct effects are.
So it's an interesting ingredient with some potential, but more research is definitely needed.
Exactly. As for ATP, the research is promising, but it's still early days. Some studies show it might enhance muscle strength and power output, but again, we need more research to figure out optimal dosages and long-term effects.
Okay, so the jury's still out on those two.
Yeah.
But what about Anvarol's claims of boosting energy and torching fat? We talked about the ATP and how it might play a role in energy production, but what about fat burning?
Well, Anvarol does contain ingredients that can support energy metabolism and muscle growth, but it's important to remember that there's no magic shortcut to fat loss.
Always comes back to that holistic approach we talked about.
Absolutely.
Diet, exercise,
Right.
and maybe, just maybe, a little boost from a supplement like Anvarol.
Precisely. It's about making those smart choices across the board, not relying on one thing as a magic solution.
And speaking of smart choices, we'd be remiss if we didn't touch on those potential side effects we mentioned earlier.
Right.
Even though Anvarol is marketed as natural and safe, it's important to remember that natural doesn't always equal harmless.
Exactly.
Take whey and soy protein, for example.
Right.
While generally considered safe, they can cause digestive issues for some people. And wild yam root, while traditionally used for hormonal balance, could potentially interact with certain medications.
Yes.
Or have unintended hormonal effects if you're taking too much.
Absolutely.
So it's always a good idea to err on the side of caution and have a chat with your doctor before adding any new supplement to your routine.
Definitely.
They can help you weigh the potential benefits and risks based on your own health history and everything.
Couldn't agree more.
It's always better to be safe than sorry, as they say.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into Anvarol, I wanted to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the emotional side of fitness goals.
Right.
Our reviewer started out feeling discouraged and even isolated because he wasn't seeing the results he wanted. And while Anvarol might have played a role in his transformation, it's important to remember that a lot of his success stemmed from his own dedication, hard work,
Oh, absolutely.
and having a supportive community.
So important.
That's huge.
Yeah.
It's not always just about the physical stuff, right?
It's not. It's about feeling good.
Feeling good in your own skin,
Exactly.
both mentally and physically.
Yeah, 100%.
So, after all this, does Anvarol really deliver those Anavar-like results without the risks? What do you think?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's tough to say for sure.
Right.
You've got this intriguing user experience and promising ingredients, but we also need more research.
We do.
And then there's that X factor, the placebo effect.
Right, which we can't forget about.
And of course, everyone responds differently to supplements. So true.
What works wonders for one person might do nothing for another.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Exactly.
Your body, your goals, all of that.
Finding what makes you feel your best.
And that often takes some experimenting, paying attention to how you feel.
Absolutely.
Maybe even talking to a healthcare professional to get their take.
Couldn't agree more.
Well said. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into Anvarol, what's the final takeaway you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest thing to remember is to be informed.
Love that.
Don't just buy into the hype, ask questions, do your research,
Be an informed consumer.
and listen to your body.
Yes.
At the end of the day, the most effective approach to fitness is one that's sustainable.
I love that sustainable fitness.
It's got to work for you long term, both physically and mentally. That's something we can all get behind.
Exactly.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Remember, knowledge is power when it comes to your health and fitness.
For sure.
Until next time, keep asking those questions and keep exploring.
And have fun. Don't forget to have fun.
Absolutely. We'll catch you in the next deep dive.